Director's report. Director of Development and Inspection, Roger Devine, 10 o'clock. Roger, sorry for the delay, but turn your mic on.
Thank you. Oh, thanks for having me. So I'm here this morning just to give you a bit of an update on the development department. I believe that this year will be a busy year for construction in the municipality. Traditionally, when we see applications for subdivisions coming in, that usually translates into building activity. And I've had some applications with more expected in the coming weeks. I have recently been in contact with the major building suppliers, and they're all telling me that they're either barely keeping up with estimates or are behind in their estimates for proposed projects. That appears to be a good indicator as well. The contractors, for the most part, are also booked up for the year already, so this will be a good year, I believe. Excuse my voice here. The subdivision bylaw review process is moving forward, and I look forward to its final adoption. It has taken a lot of work, and it'll be good to complete the process before a busier construction season begins. There have been two significant changes to the Nova Scotia Building Code regulations this year. So as of September 1st, 2019, adaptable housing has been added to the regulations. And this change requires persons building single-family dwellings to install wider doors and corridors, and to add reinforcement in the walls, particularly for washrooms, for future grab bar installations and other changes which include lower electrical switches and outlets. These features will make it easier and less costly to adapt housing for residents as their specific needs evolve without costly changes. So that's something that we're looking for on new construction sites right now. The blocking is in place in the bathroom walls, etc. As of January 1st, 2020, changes were made to the regulations which will make it easier for persons to build tiny houses. A tiny house is a dwelling which is 37 square meters or approximately 398 square feet in area. The changes allow for slightly reduced ceiling heights, ladders instead of stairways leading to lofts, and egress openings and roofs such as skylights for lofts should they be needed in case of emergency. These tiny houses will still be required to be well insulated and energy efficient. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
Roger, thanks for the report. Just a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Are you at liberty to say where the subdivisions are being planned, or is that divulge personal information? Not that we need to, but
So where they're being planned,
Yes.
I wouldn't be at liberty to divulge that right now because the applications haven't even come in yet.
they haven't even come. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's just at this point in time, just things you're hearing out in the community. Okay.
Yeah.
And number two, I know in Halifax there was some conversation about development on one of the lakes, floating homes, this type of thing.
Oh, floating homes, yeah.
Yeah, that was in the news. Any eye to regulating that? I know
Yeah.
we have no regulation. Is that permissible? Yes, no?
So the development you're referring to might have been around the Lake Banook area.
It is.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's been no overtures towards me on anything like that. There are no proposals of any kind, and there's nothing that I've seen in the future in the regulations that would address that. So, but I would say that will trigger the provincial department to make some kind of regulations regarding them. Right now, if someone wanted to do, let's say, a boathouse in the harbor, we would have no jurisdiction over that. So I'm not sure how it would work with lakes.
If I can, Mr. Chair. So it's my understanding that once it goes on the water, depending on what type of water it is, it moves from the municipal realm to either the provincial or the federal realm. So the reporting around the Porters Lake residents and their complaints indicated that the local municipality was looking to the province, in that case, because it's freshwater, to try to figure out who's responsible for regulation, if any.
If any. So it was Porter's Lake then?
Porter's Lake,
Yeah, so
yep.
my mistake, yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't there also a taxing issue? They were looking at taxation and so on?
The concerns of the residents were not so much around taxation, but they were around services and environmental issues and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Whether or not the owners of those structures actually owned the land that it was being tethered to, and all those sorts of things.
Okay. Councillor Durkee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Roger, with regard to tiny homes, I know in building now you need 2x6s. Is that still the regulation for tiny homes?
So the
On the
same.
walls, like with the thicker
Right.
insulation?
Yeah, good question. So the same energy requirements would apply to tiny homes.
Okay,
It's a conception that you need to build something nowadays with even a new house with 2x6 walls, but there are other ways to do that. You can build a house still with 2x4 walls and put additional, for instance, rigid foam insulation on it essentially makes the wall thicker and makes it more energy efficient. So you can build with 2x4s even today. But yes, tiny homes, the same rules apply to tiny homes as would apply to a brand new house, a full-size house today.
okay, and what about sewage?
Same rules apply there too. They would have to, anyone proposing to do a tiny home would have to have a design done by a qualified person, and they would have to provide us with a notification receipt from the Department of Environment for their sewer needs.
So does it have to be a sewage bed, or could it be a tank?
Typically, tanks are only approved for special purposes. Generally, if there's room enough on the lot for a proper on-site sewage disposal system, that's what they have to build.
Okay, and is there a minimum requirement for lot size?
Yes, so the lot size are still the same lot size requirements we have in our land use bylaw. So typically, out in the rural development area, which is our biggest zone, it would be 29,063 square feet.
So in order to build anything, your lot size has to be 29,000?
Because
Yes.
yeah.
That's correct, yeah.
Is that for barely condominiums?
Yeah, so you could do, in our land use bylaw, there's what's referred to as bare-land condominiums or group dwellings are possible, but they have to be done by development agreement. So then most of the rules in the setbacks and et cetera in the land use bylaw are set aside, and everything is within that agreement, any setback or whatever. And you can have things like possible cluster systems where dwellings can share one on-site sewage disposal system.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can, anything smaller, you could put a trailer on, but you can't put a,
Yeah, so it's smaller, they're, in terms of the environment approval, the qualified people are the ones who determine what is suitable and what would pass through environment. So it's kind of out of our realm, it's a Department of Environment thing. We simply ask the applicant to come in with their approval, so.
okay, but, so anything smaller, you can put a trailer on, but you can't build, in other words,
Anything smaller than,
29,000 square feet.
if it's an existing lot, providing, it could be somewhat smaller. If they can meet the setbacks and get their environment approval, they may well be able to build, even if it's somewhat smaller,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, thank
All
you.
right.
Your mic is on.
I only have a couple of, they're not concerns, but I think it's a step in the right direction. When you said about the corridors being wider, doorways being wider. I don't know why when I built my house, nice wide hallways,
Yeah.
nice wide doors going into the bedroom, washroom, and so on.
Yeah.
And even my outside door, I had no intention, but yeah, for a person when they become disabled, like my wife's wheelchair fits through every door in the house, and I built 2 bathrooms back to back, and they came in and said, make one large washroom and so on, which I had to take down a wall, throw out a tub and a sink and a toilet. Hey, now I have a huge washroom facility for the wheelchair and so on. The only other concern that I've always often had, looking at it, and I know electrical and so on. I know they use a lot more ground faults, even in kitchens and in washrooms, because now there's so many more things that a person can purchase, like electric toothbrushes and so on. I know they're rechargeable and so on, but water picks, et cetera, you know, you got to plug them in. So I'd like to see, myself personally, that there is more of a requirement on the electrical side, but that's just me. Because I wish I had more electrical outlets
Yeah.
in my house, in the hallway, et cetera, and stuff of this nature, but that's for down the road maybe and so on, but.
And you're right, I mean, people's needs change, and you never know what's going to happen in your life. So this is very forward-thinking, I think, to allow for larger, wider doors and that type of thing.
Oh, yeah, very beneficial in that respect and so on. Was there any further questions for Roger at this time? If not, Roger, thank you very much. Appreciate the report.
Thank you very
and
much.
so on.
All right.
5.2, update on the Community Navigator activities. Rebecca Rose, if you wish to come down, please.
People love me or hate me. Thank you for inviting me here today. I appreciate it very much. I circulated a report to allow everyone to have time to review it before, so
Yes.
I just want to bring a few points up concerning that and give you an update of where we are at the moment and field any questions that people might have. So it's with great pleasure that I have the opportunity to report today. Basically, when I took over my position, it was unclear as to what my job description would be. We just knew what the end goal had to be. And basically what's happened is it's kind of divided into three portions. One is recruitment, one would be community navigation, and the other would be outcome measurement. So in terms of recruitment, that spans everything from identifying and attending recruiting events. So these are things that are also being attended by the Nova Scotia Health Authority and representing the needs of the various regions. It has to do with liaising with key hospital-based administration who might have been kind of getting left a little bit. There was not a lot of great communication between those Nova Scotia Health Authority in terms of recruitment and the on-site administrators. Creation and organization of social events to support and encourage ongoing interactions between the community and new medical professionals, as well as developing and supporting recruitment initiatives with Dalhousie University and helping aid the maintenance and support of preceptors in our area, because we might have a resident seat, but if I don't have a physician who will take over that preceptorship for that student, then it doesn't matter that I have that seat. So it became very obvious that supporting and maintaining and educating the preceptors as well ends up falling under my scope. So that's kind of everything within recruitment. We have multiple timelines that I have going at any time from 10 years out, which would be high school students really that are considering medical sciences. So I already have initiatives to involve them with the residents and with other medical students so that they can really see what's going on to encourage them. So that's 10 years before they're going to become a practicing physician. So that's kind of my outside boundary for recruitment. But I also have site visits that are happening. For example, tomorrow I have 2 site visits of internal medicine physicians, and they might be practicing by the end of July. So I have very tight timelines and very long timelines and a number of variations in between, because I think it's extremely important that to fully develop the base of medical professionals that we have here, that we have a continual process so that we don't end up with that gap that we've just been experiencing. So that's kind of where things are in terms of recruitment. In terms of navigation, it's interesting because there are different areas within the community that are starting to tap into me, or my resources or my information, even though I'm specifically focused on physician navigation. But housing support for new physicians is a huge time investment. There have been a few physicians who have relocated to the area since I've been employed, and I can honestly say it takes at least 40 hours to find suitable housing, 40 like on the ground, working hours, looking through listings, trying to find rentals, walking through rent and tenancies agreements with them because they may have never rented an apartment within our province or within our country, and making sure that all the parties involved all understand what's going on. So housing, easily 40 hours per physician. It also involves providing and identifying ways in which physicians, national and international, coming to our area need to be supported to facilitate a smooth transition into our community, and that includes their family. So it may be that I end up identifying food resources, local recreational resources, satisfying child-centric needs, which could be anything from daycare to educational needs to appropriate clothing, depending on the season, because some people have never seen winter before. Not that we really saw it this year. And, connecting to possible employment situations for spouses, because it really is a family that is relocating. So that's the majority of the navigation piece. And in terms of measuring outcomes, that includes making sure that I keep our stakeholders up to date with where the money's being spent, what my job tends to be transferring into, and what kind of results we're getting. So quarterly and half-yearly reports, coming here to the councils and making sure everybody understands where the position is at the time. I would have been here sooner, but it's necessary to figure out where and what exactly the job was going to be, because I wasn't coming into something that was already pre-established. And a lot of development of social media promotional tools, because navigating for that demographic and that professional base is very different than trying to attract tourists. So that has been, that's been a fairly substantial ongoing component so far. So at this point, usually people want to know where we are and what we've done since I've taken over. So in terms of who has joined us, we've had Dr. Gambo, who's an anesthesiologist. He joined us July of 2019, just before I began. Dr. Sell is a family medicine practitioner. He joined us in October. Dr. Ahmed is a psychiatrist. He joined us in December. Dr. Mba is a family medicine practitioner who joined us in January. And Dr. Cox is a general practitioner in oncology who joined us in January as well. What do we still need? Technically, I still have 2 anesthesiology vacancies, but I have 1 offer pending with a start date tentatively in June. So that would leave us with only 1. Last year we had 4. That's a pretty big shift. In terms of family medicine, I don't know where we stood exactly when I took over in September, but I've filled 3 and we still have 6 openings. So I'm going to say we had 9 openings. Of those 6 that we still have, I have, what do I have? I've got 2 that will be starting this summer. I have another pending one that will probably be starting by August, or the end of August, which brings my family practitioner openings down to 3 from 9. So that's pretty good. In terms of medicine, internal medicine, we had 6 openings. We currently have 6 openings. I've had 5 site visits planned from February 25th to March 31st. Very successful, positive input from that first one on the 25th that I can't discuss at this time, but extremely positive results from that. I have 2 more actually that are coming to town tomorrow that I'll be touring. And we're going to a nephrology conference in May, which focuses very specifically on nephrology and internal medicine physicians who are interested in kidney function. So that will help with the current demand on the internal medicine physicians that we have now who are not specifically nephrologists. We have an opening for a pediatrician, but there's a pending offer, so I'm going to call that not an opening because it's tentatively filled. We have 2 psychiatrist openings with 2 pending offers for starts in June, so therefore no openings, and 1 radiologist. So that is where we are. So by a pending offer, what I mean is that there's either something in writing that's being negotiated or has already been signed, but that physician has not yet begun the first day of employment. So anything in that range is pending. That is my report.
Any questions? Councilor Berkey, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Rebecca. I just, you know that our recruitment team is thrilled with the progress that's being
Thank you.
made. I know a big question for most people is family doctors, because that's something so many people need. So when you say that we are getting family medicine doctors, are these people who are going to be practicing as family medicine doctors and taking on a caseload, or are some of them hospitalists or emergency docs? Because we know some do stay, and that going into family practice isn't as favorable as becoming an emergency or hospitalist. So can you shed some light on that?
Sure, I'd love to. So basically, I think it's the same as with anybody. A little variation in your job description doesn't hurt. And so the demands of having a solid family medicine practice where that is 100% of the focus, I think can be, from what I'm interpreting from other physicians that I've spoken to and physicians that are coming here, is that can be quite draining after a while. So they like to have some variation in terms of working as an on-call hospitalist, keeps their skills up, and kind of changes it up a little bit. The same with emergency medicine. And I think if you look at what we all, that's an assumption, what many of us see as being that traditional family medicine doctor, we see somebody who's maybe doing some deliveries, maybe spending some time in the emergency room. We might see them in the hospital on call as the on-call physician. So in terms of physicians coming in and taking over 100% family practice, we're seeing a little bit less of that. We're also seeing a little bit less smaller patient loads. So some of our physicians in our community have patient bases of, between 4,000 and 5,000 patients. That's huge. And so we are not going to get one physician to come in and step into that role and take over all those patients. That might equal maybe 2 or 3 family physicians now to satisfy that need, because that practice just kind of grows. People have babies and they get married, and practices grow that way. So the other reality is there are only so many positions for hospitalist within the system, and so it's a matter of finding the right family medicine physicians for the opportunities that we have here that are looking for the type of practice and the type of lifestyle. So it's not a quick fix. It's a matter of finding the best match between those. Did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, yes.
In a roundabout way? I wish it was a simple answer.
I know it's not simple. So I think what everybody wants to see is, when are we going to get a doctor who's going to say, I'm taking new patients?
June.
Wonderful. That's exactly.
Actually, I think it's July.
Okay.
July and August, the 2 new family medicine physicians
Yes.
who are starting in July and August will not be taking over a pre-established practice. And those, there was a posting on the Chamber of Commerce site in terms of, okay, people, this is what's going on. And some of the feedback that I got back from that allowed me to reach out and say to the community, where do you want these new hires, basically, the new physicians that come, where do you want to see this information? And there were a number of people that said, we want to see it on the chamber site, this is what we're watching. So when those physicians begin,
Yes.
and where they begin, and whose caseload they'll be taking over, whatever details I can give out, that will come forth at the Chamber of Commerce site.
Perfect.
So July
Thank you.
and then August.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor LeBlanc?
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
It sounds like you're doing a good job. I think we'll keep you.
Okay, thank you.
As a community-based council, what are we not doing, and what can we do to help you, and how to keep them here? Like a lot of them, or I've heard, it sounds like, that some from other countries, they come here, they get their license, then they move to a bigger city. Is that a problem?
Well, that depends on your perspective.
Okay.
So first of all, to address the first portion of your question, what are we not doing? I think what we weren't doing, we are doing now. So what I continue to hear is the simplicity of having one place to go for residents, for medical students, for Dalhousie, for new physicians, for the recruiters from the Nova Scotia Health Authority, for them to have one person to connect with, which would be in my position, really means that that umbrella is working effectively now. So I don't think it's a matter of a lot of things that we're not doing. I think we're just, now that it all comes under one umbrella, and I've got a good, at the moment it's me, whoever's in my position, would have a great perspective on all the different things that are going on at the same time. That's important. So that wasn't getting done. It is getting done now. We're seeing a fairly strong positive trend. So when I am able to identify something else that we need to do, I'll let you know
Yeah, okay.
for that. In terms of physicians that are maybe only here for a short period of time. So to try and explain that, we have basically reciprocity agreements with a number of countries where the education systems in terms of medicine are fairly equitable. And as a result, evaluating those physicians in line with our standards, it's a very simple process. But there are a number of countries, many more countries, that we do not have that kind of situation with. And so as a result, we need to find ways to, it doesn't mean that there aren't extremely skilled, knowledgeable physicians from those areas. It just means that we don't have a blanket policy with regards to them. So there is a process called a practice ready assessment, or PRA as we shorten it to, for international medical graduates. And so what that means is that physicians who have applied to this specific program from other countries that we don't have that agreement with, have all of their qualifications assessed. They also write an exam, and there are a number of interviews. To the best of I don't know the process completely. There are a lot of processes involved with licensing. So basically what happens is maybe one of those candidates gets approved to be assessed here in Canada for their medical skills. So last week we had 6 practice-ready assessment international medical graduates that were touring our zone, so our western zone. We had 6 of them. And they got to be interviewed at 6 separate sites. And what will happen is, if everything goes according to plan, these practice-ready assessment candidates will be granted what they call a defined license. So a defined license means that they are able to practice family medicine while they are being, I want to look for a word that's softer than supervised, but basically somewhere between supervision and mentoring. So they'll be monitored for 2 years. The restricted or the defined license means that they will not be allowed to be involved in obstetrics or emergency medicine. And so during those 2 years, they'll be assessed. Sorry, it's a little bit longer than that. Basically, in exchange for the opportunity to be assessed in Canada, to be assessed in Nova Scotia, in exchange, they agree to 2 years of service in exchange. So I know a lot of people are quite critical because what they see is they see international medical graduates coming in for a short period of time and then they're leaving. But that's the deal. And everybody's agreed to it. And in the short term, we still have had highly competent family medicine practitioners here for 2 years while we get other things in place. So, and the reality is, how many of us move away and then we come back to someplace that's home? So for people that are coming to the country, maybe for them going home is going to an area in the country that has a larger cultural base for them. And in my opinion, I wouldn't blame them for that. So it does look from the outside, I'm sure, that a number of physicians that kind of do this practice ready assessment come for 2 years and then they vanish. But that's the deal, and that's what the government has agreed to, and that's what they've agreed to. And in the meantime, we have a physician for a couple of years. And something to remember, Dr. Wertland, who just left, who was, you know, a very popular physician and very well involved in the community, he came here through one of those programs. So just because someone is coming to our community because of that initiative doesn't mean that they're automatically gone after 2 years. We have to be open to all sorts of experiences and all sorts of opportunities when it comes to physicians. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
I don't know why people don't want to stay here. No.
Well, I agree, but
Another thing, what about services? Do we lack services as far as the Mariner Center, the Y, the airport, transportation for, they have to go to Halifax now if they want to go on vacation. Is that a problem?
that's above my pay grade.
Oh, that's fine.
Really. I can only represent and present what we do have.
Yeah.
I think for our area and our position relative to Halifax, we have an awful lot going for us. And anyone who says, wow, it's really a drag to have to drive 3.5 hours to the airport, I say, yeah, but my commute's one song
Yeah.
every day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
doesn't take
okay.
long to do the math that way.
Oh, okay, so you do get some comments on that, do you?
Yeah,
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 okay.
absolutely. But the
Okay.
lifestyle, I think once we talk about lifestyle and kind of the fact that they're not in traffic for 45 minutes twice a day,
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
I hear you're doing a good job, so just keep them coming.
Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham, go ahead.
Right, yeah, just following along with Councillor Blonde's question about retention. Is there somebody specifically tasked with retaining the doctors that we do have? And I know that that's you as well.
Yep, that's under my job description too, yeah.
Okay, so you do some retention activities, okay.
One part party planner.
I gotcha. So that's good to know. The vacancies, the salaries, are any of those dollars, when those positions are not filled, is that money spent in the community or is it just not spent?
I'm not sure if I know what you mean. So if you have a school board position that's not filled, does that money go into the school? Or do you wait to fill it?
No, still still budgeted and can at the end of the year be spent on other things so long, so are those dollars spent in the community?
I'm going to say that I don't know, because, first of all, when it comes to contract negotiations, I have nothing to do with that. That
Okay.
all takes place with Nova Scotia Health Authority and Department of Health and those recruiters. I don't have anything to do with that. So that would probably be a provincial government funding question. Yeah. Because that money's not coming from our community. Indirectly,
Yeah,
right?
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
COVID-19, that's going to be a big issue. We may be positioned, because we're a rural community, transmissibility may not be, I'm not a virologist, obviously, but I would think we'd have some advantage in the fact we're not very densely populated, so it likely won't pass as quickly from person to person, but no matter. So when it does come to the community, and it will likely, I know there's the number. So is it 811?
811?
811 you could call, but with the lack of family physicians, like, do you know have you heard who's going to do the testing? Or is that something we should have somebody from the health authority maybe come in and talk a little bit about that with us, just so we as counselors, if somebody calls us,
I can clearly say that is not under my job description.
no, just thought you might hear something.
I'm getting the doctors.
Yeah.
What people do with them, that's not on me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just, obviously, Councillor LeBlanc asked the big question, is there anything we could be doing further? And we're doing what we can do now, so that's good and nice to hear, so.
Yeah, as you know, we're continuing to, as a community, we're continuing to stay positive. The negative chatter is probably the most destructive. And I would like to think that I have enough positive stuff getting out there as soon as we have positive changes, that there has been a shift in that direction. And so, please use this information that you got this morning and send out the right information, like get it out there. If somebody has a question about what's actually going on, please contact me, because that really does have a huge effect. If I'm looking at relocating to a community and I go on social media for that community to see what's going on, I don't want to see a bunch of negative chatter. I want to see people that are positive and people that are asking questions and getting answers that are reasonable. And I think as a community, maybe to follow up with Councillor LeBlanc, maybe that's what we need to do. Continue to be positive and continue to work together. Yeah.
Good, okay, thank you.
Deputy Warden?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask you a question in regards to the Nova Scotia Health Authority and their recruiters. How exactly does that work between this organization and the Nova Scotia Health Authority? Do we say, hey, there's these doctors that are possibly looking to come to the area, or do you actually go out and look for doctors and tell the Nova Scotia Health Authority? My biggest concern when we started this organization, and don't get me wrong, I know there's a need for it, but I think we're delving into something that the provincial government and the federal government should be doing rather than the municipal government. So how is it working between the Nova Scotia Health Authority recruiters and you?
So how does it work? How do we
Yeah,
work
how
together?
does it
How does
actually
that
work?
team, what does that team look like? Okay, so I have nothing to do with contract offers. I have nothing to do with licensing applications.
I knew that.
Okay, so basically what happens is a physician, it can kind of happen two different ways is how I see it the most. So either a physician will contact the Nova Scotia Health Authority and say, we are thinking that we might like to come to Nova Scotia. What are the job openings like? What are the job postings like? What zones or what regions, right? And so from that point, Nova Scotia Health Authority will say, okay, so we have more positions open in the western zone and the northern zone. Okay, so then the physician might say, oh, okay, well, I'm looking at the two, I'm more interested in the western zone. So then the recruiter for our area, whose name is Patty Smith, and she is an absolute delight to work with, Patty Smith will be contacted, and then she and the physician set up times for visits. What kind of medicine, so she works with family medicine practitioners and emergency medicine within our zone. So if it falls within those two ranges, she is the person. If it's a specialist over and above that, then there's a separate recruiter that works for that. So they set up the site visit, and then I take care of the community portion here. And so basically, the Nova Scotia Health Authority recruiter and myself set up a comprehensive exploration of the community for that physician, which includes site visits, facility tours, connecting with local physicians within that specialty of medicine that they have, getting to know resources that are available for their kids, their families, their whatever. And so that's how Nova Scotia Health Authority and this position as community navigator, recruiter, that's how those work. So before, the recruiter for Nova Scotia Health would bring the physician here or meet the physician here and tour the area, but it really wasn't nearly as in-depth as what's going on now because the person simply isn't from the area. So in that manner, I would say that we are not duplicating a service that was being done or should be being done by Nova Scotia Health Authority. The other way a physician could end up kind of being toured by Nova Scotia Health and the navigator position is if we do a conference where physicians who are looking for different opportunities within their specialty may see a booth that I have there, and they might say, hey, you know what, I've been thinking about Nova Scotia. I really like what I'm seeing, what's going on in Yarmouth. I would like to go and check things out with Yarmouth, at which point I then refer them to the recruiter from Nova Scotia Health because that's that point. They're the ones that make sure that the physician is able to be licensed in practice because of Nova Scotia College of Physicians and Surgeons, and makes whatever connections have to be done through Doctors Nova Scotia, so that we're not spending a lot of time with physicians that aren't able to practice here. They're also the ones that are taking care of what I described earlier with the practice ready assessment for the international medical grads. So there's a lot. They are busy. I see no duplication. I really don't see a vacancy in terms of what the province is providing for us. I think that we're just picking up and supporting those efforts with a focus on what we as a community need and what we as a community can offer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I tend to disagree with you a little bit in that regards, but opinions vary widely, and this is such a complex subject.
Very.
It really frustrates me in regards to things like that, of duplication of services. Like, there always seems to be downloading on a municipal government, and I just want to be making sure that we're not duplicating a service that the provincial and federal governments should be doing. I'm going to move on because my time is very limited. In regards to doctor openings and family physicians, you said that there was 2 coming, and you also mentioned that you were going to be advertising on the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce site. What will you be mentioning on the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce site? That there's two doctors coming, and if you need a family physician, this is where you go, or?
Yes. Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly what I'm going to be doing. We put up a video.
What about the patients like myself? We have no family doctor that are orphaned that are on a waiting list. What happens with those?
I have nothing to do with the management of the patient load that's on 811 that are registered. So as an example, we had a new physician take over in January, and he took over Dr. Safakish's practice. So my understanding is that because of that arrangement, he is required to take care of the patients that fell under Dr. Safakish's client base. The two physicians that will be starting this summer are not taking over a previously established practice. Therefore, they will be open to taking patients who are either sitting on 811 or patients that call them looking for physicians. So what we did was, because the community navigator position is organized under the scope of the Chamber of Commerce, we put out a little video on their site just so that people knew what was going on. And lots of people saw that, and there were lots of views and shares. And so when I had asked through that media platform, where do people want to see, where do people want to hear about new hires, that is where they said they wanted to hear it. So in July, when I hear that Dr., whose name I can't say at the moment, will be starting at X location on this date and will be taking new patients, then absolutely, I will be putting that up there. If I have a new physician that's, say, taking over Dr. Wertland's caseload, as an example, then I will put that up as well. I am restricted a fair bit in terms of how much information I can let out when, and again, that's above my pay grade.
See, the problem that I see is we have a whole bunch of people out there with family doctors, and we put there that this new doctor is taking an intake of new patients. The problem is, well, I know of many, many, many people who do not like their doctor, and they think this is an opportunity to get a different one. My big problem is that people that don't have family doctors currently should be, and it's, I think that posting that, something like that on the site of the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce is more confusing. I think people should be referred to the Department of Health directly, rather than, I'm not exactly how insurance work. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I've taken up too much of my time, and I'm starting to get a little upset the more that I think about this whole situation, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
I value your
Counselor.
input.
No. Councillor Cushing?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Concerning, I certainly understand Councillor, or Deputy Warden Cunningham's position on his Nova Scotia Health Authority responsibility. When I completely understand that stuff, but what have they done for us? Our navigator, our community navigator has been put in place to assist that. And from the scope of her work that she has outlined for us, I believe is a very helpful way to attract doctors in this position. Personally, I like to get out of the finger pointing. It's their responsibility, it's all our responsibility to look after our community, our province, and our country. So it's very important. Secondly, excuse me, you speak about bringing in doctors from different countries and whatnot. Are we seeing an increase of graduates, high school graduates, not only in Yarmouth but in Nova Scotia, in Canada, that are going into the medical field but can't get into a position or what am I trying to seat to learn this? One question for you. That's the first question. So.
Yep, that's a complicated question. And it's the answer, I'm probably not very well versed in terms of answering that, because I hear a lot of stuff, but it's all hearsay. And because that doesn't fall under the scope of my position,
Right.
I don't
Okay.
feel like I could speak to that appropriately.
Yeah.
I do know that there are students from our community who are attending medical school, mostly at Dalhousie, but at a number of other institutions. And some are coming back after studying internationally. And I see all sorts of variations of how that can take place.
Yeah.
But in terms of the difficulty, it's certainly not an easy process, but in terms of details, I couldn't speak to it, I don't feel.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your your comments on that, and again, it's beyond your scope, but again, I hear lots of rumors about, you know, students who want to take the medical profession that can't get, or once they get there, go somewhere else, and so I can appreciate all that. One, I wasn't going to say too much, but when you brought up about the negativity that's around, I can appreciate your comment concerning that. You know, exposure is always easy. It's always so easy to throw stones and make negative comments as their public relation thing that they do, so they can bring attention to how bad we are, or how far behind we are, and how we go without, and how we, everything wrong, okay? These people that expose those negative comments to public media and whatnot, and out on the street, they really should research all the information, and then probably they would understand a little bit more. But it's so easy to say no. And we've seen that from, you know, I've seen it from some of our recent decisions that we made in a bigger issue. But people are not looking at the whole story. Research it, find out, ask questions, and get rid of that negative. It's so easy to just splash out something bad, because you do, especially if you're just putting it on, I use the example of Facebook. It's so easy to do that, and you don't have to be responsible for it. You know, you just say, oh, well, I just asked a question, you know. So I appreciate what you're doing, and you do have a big task ahead of you, and I like your vision of your 10-year projects about from a high school graduate to an actual medical position. I never really thought of that before, but it's good. I think you're you're going in the right direction, and any negative comments you have, send them my way.
I will do so.
Okay.
It-
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's such an emotionally charged issue, and when people feel cornered and vulnerable, it often, it's difficult. And so there will be negative chatter, and that's okay. I've got thick skin.
That's human nature. Councillor Durkee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have two quick things. One is that NSHA is responsible for the recruitment of doctors, but they are not responsible for the retention. And once they're recruited here, they're done. NSHA is done, and it's up to the community and the hospital community to make sure that that person is happy and stays. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that we are being looked at as a model for community development, and that there are other areas in the province who are contacting us to learn about what it is that we're doing, because they're seeing it as positive, so they're doing the same thing. Nobody can sell our community like those who live in the community, and that's extremely important.
Thank you very much. Our time is running very short. I have a couple of observations, I'll say. You had in your report jobs for the spouses, and that can be very difficult. Are you connected with the Wrens on their?
Absolutely. I am
Okay.
connecting on more ways than
Okay. Well,
I even
yeah.
thought were available before I started this position, and we're having lots of positive effects,
Well,
absolutely.
in today's in today's growth, most husband and spouses have professional jobs. One's a doctor, one's an engineer. You can bring the doctor here, but there's no major industry here that needs
Oh,
an
I
engineer.
found one for the engineer.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying, you know, that's how things roll now. You know, it used to be the husband and a wife and kids. Husband worked, wife stayed at home. That scenario has changed in the last number of years, so I realize that can be very hard. The issue that I have is the Yarmouth Regional Hospital is a training hospital. I do not feel that you being sponsored by the municipal units, by the government and so on, should have to go out and find their special. When I say that, I mean they're x-ray technologists, the cancer doctors or anything, but you mentioned in there that you had a radiologist.
Well, that's a position that's open.
Yeah, and I don't feel that you should have to spend 1 minute looking for a radiologist, because that is, if Yarmouth wants to be a training hospital, they have to have those people there to do that work. What we need, or I feel the general public needs, that I represent, is GPs, doctors, I'll say internalists and so on. I think that's what we need. If they don't want to have a radiologist, they don't want to have a cancer doctor there, then they want to have an oncology clinic. They want to have that section up there. If the Yarmouth Regional Hospital don't want to get off its own self and go out and find through the health authority, which the deputy warden was stating, the province has kind of downloaded that. And I'm going to give you the classic example. About 16 years ago, there was a councillor sitting on this council and said, be careful where you go. He said, once you open that door, he said, the government's just going to keep feeding you to do the work for them. And that's what has happened over the years. Councils and the general public did not have to go out and find doctors. They came because there was a need and the government found them. Now, the community is out there finding doctors. And I have no issues with that for general practitioners. I do not want to find their specialists. That's up to them. If I have a car dealership, I have to find the mechanics, not you. You bring me your car and I say to you, go get, find me the mechanic to work on your car? No. I have to have the mechanic in the dealership to work on your car. If the Yarmouth Regional Hospital wants to stay as a training hospital, they should have to find the people, not the administrative people. They can find them anywhere. But the doctors, the specialists and so on, I feel and that is the provincial government to find those people and supply them. I really do.
Can I comment?
Yes, by all means.
So I don't do anything to recruit the specialists. I have nothing to do with that unless they're already in the community. So if I get a call from the recruiter that deals with the specialist and says, I'm going to be in town, I've got 2 psychiatrists that are looking, because that's a specialist as well,
Yes.
and a radiologist, the family medicine doctors, they need to have their x-rays read, right?
Yes.
So that helps them provide comprehensive, supportive family medicine. A radiologist is x-rays and stuff, not radiation.
Okay.
So,
Okay, I'm misunderstood then.
so that specialist is here with their recruiter, their specialist
Yes.
recruiter, which is taken care of by the Nova Scotia Health Authority.
Okay.
I'm going to take them on a drive and show them the schools and the lighthouse
Okay.
and,
I misunderstood. I thought you were looking for those also. I apologize.
no, not particularly, not particularly.
Okay then.
Yeah, I support Nova Scotia Health Authority when those physicians, when those specialists come here, but I'm not necessarily, we did go to the anesthesiology conference.
Yes.
Because that was a
Yes,
huge
you know,
need.
No, okay.
Whatever's going to satisfy what the family medicine doctor needs to best serve their practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
didn't want to spend the
Yep.
time looking for those when I felt that
Yeah,
was their
no,
position.
no, I'm not looking.
Okay,
That's not my-
misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Was there-
welcome.
I see there's no further questions. Rebecca, thank you very much for your
welcome.
presentation.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, did you have a question? No, okay. 5.3, waste check that was from the January 22nd council meeting. Gus and Amy, if you wish to come down.
Good morning.
Morning.
Is
Go
this the
ahead.
device that changes slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm technologically challenged. Well, that was a very interesting session. Now we're going to talk about something a little less exciting. We're going to talk about organic contamination in grain carts. As soon as I figure out how to change that. Oh, there we go. So as you all know, the compost facility that we utilize and we've utilized for a couple of decades now belongs to the town of Yarmouth. Yarmouth and Digby County organics are all processed at that facility, both the residential and the stuff from the business and commercial sector. So this is the issue, contamination in green carts, and the major problem is plastic. And these are some pictures that were provided. I believe the one on the right was from the compost facility itself. When we see this material turning up on their tipping floor, it's very hard to make compost out of this material. We've been advertising about, one of the big issues is biodegradable or compostable products, or at least they claim in the packaging that they are. And we've been advertising against these products for quite some time. You can see there's an ad from 2016 and another from 2018. We've also been working with the businesses trying to keep these products off the shelves because they're not acceptable at the Yarmouth compost facility. We've had limited success with that. Some businesses are very cooperative, others not so much. But if they're not cooperative, we have no way to prevent them from selling these products. Some of the ones that won't take the material off of their shelves allow us to put what we call a shelf talker on the shelf. Basically, it's just a little sign that warns the residents that if they purchase these products, they could cause their green cart to be rejected if they use them. 2018, 2019 hotline calls. As you can see, we still get quite a few calls, even though we have a solid waste app, we have the website, we have the widget on the website, and we have email. People still like to use the telephone. So about 3,000 calls, and over a third of those were about green carts. A chunk of those are going to be about the fact that their green cart may be damaged or need repair. It's important to remember that our green carts, the vast majority of them are more than 20 years old now, and they came with a 10-year warranty, so you can figure that out yourself from there. On our separation guides, we state quite clearly again that plastic has no place in our green carts. You can see there's a sticker there that we use. Biodegradable, compostable plastic bags are not accepted in the green cart, so we've been trying to be as clear as we can about that message. Amy, if you want to add anything at any time, just jump in.
The sticker we put on.
She wanted me to mention that that's the sticker we actually put on the top of green carts, so people, again, one last chance for them to get the message before they put the material in the cart. We also put out tips, things to make green cart management a little easier. Again, we've been promoting the message for more than 2 decades now, and we've been trying to make it consistent and clear. We also have this card that we make available to the haulers, so if they see material in green cart that's not acceptable, they can check off what the material is so the homeowner knows what they've done wrong. We keep track of any rejections in our database. Where possible, we follow up with the residents. Consistency is the key, and this is something we've struggled with for a long, long time. Had we been consistent in rejecting carts from day one 20 years ago, I don't think we'd still be seeing some of the problems that we're seeing now. The issue is, we try and have a meeting with the haulers every year, and we talk about things like plastic in the green cart, and then for a while they'll become very diligent and we'll start getting rejections and we'll follow up on them. But then over time that starts to slack off, and then it's really hard to blame the haulers. I mean, their day ends when their route is complete. So they start very early and they finish when it gets done. So if they have to stop at every third or fourth house and fill out a card and write down the rejection, the address for us, it adds time to their day. So, unless their boss is pushing them, then they tend to not want to do that a lot. But again, consistency would be the key. Rejection summary. As you all know, just before Christmas, the town of Yarmouth essentially drew a line in the sand and said, enough is enough. We can't do this anymore. We can't make compost out of plastic. And they were very clear with their municipal partners that something had to be done. So you guys in turn communicated that to your hauler, who has been very diligent since about the middle of December in terms of rejecting green carts. So I don't know if you can make this out or not, but there's a little summary of the number of carts that have been rejected in the various municipalities. You can see that your municipality has been very diligent at rejecting carts that had unacceptable material. But it's important to remember here that even when you see those big numbers, if you look at it as a percentage of the households being collected from, and that's what the column on the right gives you an idea of how many households we're talking about. And that's on a monthly basis for those 2 months. And so remember, in each one of those months, there's at least 2 collections. So if you're seeing that the total for the month is around 6%, that means average about 3% of the green carts on any collection day would be rejected. So in the big scheme of things, there's lots to be happy about. Your residents are really doing a pretty good job. It's just that there's room for improvement, and it's become an issue for the compost facility. We did green cart audits in the summers of 2016, 17, and 18, where we did random samples of green carts throughout the region. And you can see that the results we were finding at that time are pretty consistent with what you're seeing now in terms of the rejections being brought forward by your haulers. The problem hasn't grown. It's just been, it's gotten to a point where the compost facility can no longer process it. And as you know, the compost facility has had some challenges of its own in terms of quality and overs and contamination and things. And they're really trying to clean up their act. So you have to be sympathetic to their position as well. And that's why they sort of cracked down, I guess you could say. So yeah, just a little bit more detail about the audits we did. We looked at about 4,500 carts over the 3 summers. 88% of those were very well sorted. We were finding biodegradable bags were the largest contaminant, and we were finding them in about 6% of the carts. About 4% were using plastic bags, and that's one of the issues we've had personally at WasteCheck with biodegradable bags. Even if they did break down in our system, my neighbor sees me going out with what looks like a plastic bag and putting it in my green cart, so they go, well, why can't I just put it in my Sobeys bag and put it in my green cart? So just visually, it's just not a good image. So that's one of the reasons we've always been opposed to them. Even if they can get the technology working properly, that it will break down in the composting system we use, it just doesn't look right to see somebody putting anything that resembles a plastic bag into a green cart. And there's some other types of contamination as well, styrofoam, cat litter, and miscellaneous garbage. Some regions in the province are accepting cat litter in the green carts now. The town is resistant to that at this particular time, but that may become an issue again in the future. At least I'd like to see it become one. Again, we've been working very closely with the town on a social media campaign to promote this issue of keeping plastics out of the green carts. These are some of the ads that we've been running. That is a very nice looking green cart up there. And again, this is more of the marketing issue. Some really good ads about the product that you're trying to make and how you can't make it out of plastic. Again, just more of the ads we've been running has really been quite a push between us and the town to get this message out there on social media. Oop. This is a handout from the town. I think you should have copies of it in your package. It shows you products that you can use in your green cart, as well as identifying some that you should never put in your green cart. We find this to be a pretty helpful tool as well. Acceptable items, and again, we've got some of the samples here. Amy's a big fan of the box board liner for your green cart. Why go out and buy a product when you've probably got a cracker box at home that you can use? But that's personal choice, I guess. But there are products available that you can buy. This one is the one that probably causes the most confusion. It is acceptable and it is completely organic, but if you look at it, it looks like it has a plastic liner in it, but it's not. It's actually a starch-based cellulose something or another, completely compostable and completely degrades in the town's compost facility. So that one is acceptable for use, but that one confuses people a little bit because it looks like it might have plastic in it, but it really does not. I'm just zipping right along here. And again, seems like every week there's a new product on the shelves that claims to be compostable, and this is not a challenge that's unique to us. You've probably seen in the media some of the stories nationally, where products are on store shelves and they're listed as compostable, but when you talk to the local facilities that are actually doing the composting, they say, no, we can't compost that product. This is the latest thing that's coming to haunt us, compostable Ziploc bags, because we don't have enough problems already. And again, Amy's got some samples of some of those as well. Again, we continue to do community outreach. We try and get this message out there. You'll see us this summer. We'll be at every festival and event that we can find the time and the resources to get to, promoting this message of keeping the plastics out of the compost. We've got at least one university summer student funding. Anyway, we don't have the student yet, but we've got the funding to hire one. They'll be helping us with this message as well, and we're hoping to get a second student as well, just to get more bodies on the ground, more boots on the ground out there talking about this issue. Oops. And one last one. Yeah, that's the funding we've received. Thanks to Divert for some of that. So yeah, we'll have that student hopefully for 15 weeks, and we've applied for funding for 12 weeks for a regular summer student position as well. So I'll take the questions now. And if they're hard, Amy will take them.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm going to ask a question in general, and then I'm going to follow it up with what I think you're going to tell me with a comment. Is there any compost facilities in Nova Scotia that can break down the...
John, can you speak towards your mic? They can't get you on the...
Sorry. Is there any compost facilities in Nova Scotia that can break down these quote-unquote compostable plastic garbage bags?
Well, that's a kind of a sensitive question. There are some municipalities within Nova Scotia that allow some of these products to be used in their programs. However, if you talk to the people on the ground who operate the compost facilities, they will tell you no, they can't compost them. But sometimes, believe it or not, decisions get made for political purposes as opposed for scientific. So in those cases, the municipalities decided that their residents wanted to use these products, so they gave them approval to do so. But the people on the ground who are working in the compost facility are scratching their heads going, we don't know what we're supposed to do with this.
I'm glad you said that, because since we all know that there's a ban on single-use plastic bags here in Nova Scotia, so I guess my question to you would be, who would I contact, or what organization would I contact, since the province can obviously ban a certain type of plastic? Maybe that this compostable plastic is something that should not be on our shelves, whether it be in the garbage bag form or the plastic baggie form. Who would I contact, or who could council contact in that regard? Would that go through Divert? Would that go through to the Minister of Environment?
I think it would have to go through the Minister of Environment. The minister has the authority to ban different types of packaging, and I think a lot of these bags could be described as packaging. And clearly, since they're the one who are bringing in the provincial bag ban, they seem to think they have the authority to do that. So I'd like to think that they could ban these as well. So, do you want to?
I'll just,
She's kicking her head. She wants to say something.
I'll just add that they are part of the single-use plastic
They are?
bag ban in October 30th is when that comes into effect. So they are part of it, but that means that, for example, this is one I got at Costco last week. So this is out like that you can put your meat or what have you in it. So like a store couldn't buy a compostable bag and give it to a customer with their things that they purchased in it. So it's part of it that way. But just like if you wanted to sell a package of garbage bags at Sobeys, they can still sell packages of bags. Do you know, like, but it's like at the cashier, you can't, like, a store cannot give out a bag, whether it's compostable or plastic.
Okay.
I don't know if that clears things up, but that
Yeah,
ban does
actually,
come into
that
effect
cleared
October
up quite a
30th.
bit.
So they can really do anything, and that act, also, there is the opportunity that the minister could add other single-use products in addition
Yep.
at some time.
Oh, thank you very much for that. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Cunningham?
Yeah, is it possible to, and I don't know if this exists anywhere, the information sheet you had that you're circulating around and online. Yeah, is it possible to make that a sticky to put on the compost cart?
Do you want me to take that?
Sure. Everything is
You
possible.
could. You could, there's a lot of text to it, so I find this is very useful when we're at a booth. I was recently at the Ken Langell Garden Symposium at the high school, and there was a lot of people, and those who didn't really understand why they can't use the bags, that's when I found this was really useful. Like, it really explains it. So not everyone would read all of this, so, you know, the sticker we have now that we put on the green carts.
Oh, you do, okay.
We do have stickers, so this goes on the lid, and it says, "No plastic bags are accepted in your green cart, including those labeled biodegradable and/or compostable." And it says, "Please use paper or boxboard liners," and it's got pictures of products that aren't acceptable. So we do stick that right on the green carts, probably for about the last 10 years. That's been part of our education.
Yeah, just to follow up, do our truckers, or garbage, or our compost collectors, do they put those on, or is it up to the resident to put it on?
No, some of the collectors have them, so they can put them on if they want. We put them on when we deliver the green cart, so if it's a new home or one that we're replacing, which we're replacing a lot right now because of their age. And so we do that, and then if we're even going out to repair a cart, like we have them in our vehicles, so if there's an older cart that we're putting an event in, we'll slap the sticker on then. So we're kind of trying to catch up on the ones that went out before we came up with the sticker.
Clearly, my idea wasn't original, so that's good. Just one question about the rejection summary, and perhaps a comment. So in January, the municipality of Yarmouth had a rejection rate of 9.59. I'm assuming from what you said, that's because the carriers are being a little bit more diligent about rejecting them when there's plastic in them. And I'm assuming that February 20th, rejections have cut in half. So I'm assuming that was somewhat successful, if that's the case. Is that right?
Yes and no. The total rejections are carts, and I think bags are on there as well, so if garbage got rejected. And clearly, we like to think that if the rejection numbers went down, then we're seeing an improvement. And we believe that's to be the case because the fact that we're getting positive feedback from the compost facility that things are improving. But I'm hesitant to, or I caution, I guess, that just because a neighboring municipality may have a lower number of rejections than you, it doesn't mean they're doing a better job. It may just mean that they're not being as diligent at rejecting the carts. So I just wanted to throw that caution out there.
Yeah.
But the feedback we're getting from the compost facility is that they're seeing a marked improvement.
Good, thank you.
Councillor LeBlanc?
Hi there, Amy and Gus.
Good morning.
What's the most problems that you have with contaminated? Is it blue bags, garbage bags, or the carts?
I think probably it's the carts, although I'm sure if you were to talk to Scotia Recycling, they'd probably have some concerns about some of the material in the blue bag as well. Really, the green card is the main focus now, simply because the town was running into a position where they just couldn't process material as it was being delivered. But that's not to say there's not some contamination in the other areas as well.
Right.
Divert funded some audits at landfills over the last number of years, so we know that there's still contamination in the clear bags as well.
You were at the last meeting, no, not the last one, 2 meetings ago. There was a problem with schools or a school. Has that been remedied?
No.
No.
And it wasn't a single school. There's issues with several schools that are having their organics rejected.
Okay.
And we're having a difficult time getting in contact with the school board on some of the issues. But we will persevere.
The commercial have their separators, do they? Or don't they? They separate their own bags and...
It's really varies with the relationship between the hauler and the commercial client, but typically the hauler just likes to pick the material up. They're not going to do any sorting of the material. So it's generally incumbent on the business or the school to get it to the shed or the fenced area, wherever they
And the
keep it.
commercial does do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they're having, the schools, some schools are having their green cards rejected as well for the same reasons.
As well as businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just residential, it's
So,
across the board.
so you have problems all around, the residential and everything.
Yeah, it's spread across the board, but again, I encourage you to remember that if you look at the total number of carts out there and the number that we're seeing issues in, by and large, most people, the vast majority of the people are getting it, but there's definitely still room for improvement, no doubt about it.
4 years ago, when I was campaigning, there was an elderly couple from New York, and they told me how to solve that. They said in New York, they burn everything.
I like to think there wouldn't be much of an appetite for that here, but
Thank you.
I don't know. I hear there was a fire somewhere near Mr. Anthony's residence recently. I don't know if that was related or not. But.
Wasn't organic. No. Moving on. Councillor Cushion.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. You guys, Gus and Amy, you're talking about these compostable, so-called compostable plastic bags. Is there a heat factor to that they have to reach a certain heat in order to compost properly? Is that my understanding?
It's not really a heat issue because the compost facility, well, all compost facilities are required to reach a minimum temperature. I think it's 55 degrees Celsius and hold it for 3 consecutive days.
Right.
And that's for pathogen kill. But so it's not about the temperature because the compost plants deliver the temperature that's required. It's more about the duration, the amount of time. Because of the amounts of material that industrial compost plants, like the one the town of Yarmouth has, are handling, they have to move, they're trying to speed up nature. Anything will compost, or anything organic will compost if you leave it alone long enough, but they're trying to push it, speed the process up. So, they're taking it and turning, hopefully, into a product within a year or so. The issue with these bags is that the way they break down is they start crumbling into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. And if you wait it long enough, I'm confident eventually you wouldn't be able to find the pieces anymore without a microscope, but there's still going to be pieces of plastic in there. And of course, now microplastics in everything, including our drinking water, is another big area of concern, which is even more reason why we don't like to see these products that are essentially designed to do just that, turn into microplastics.
I think if we really looked into the microplastics that you're talking about, I think a lot of our products in industries are using that really don't. They get into the food chain, and I won't go too much further on that one because I know one particular industry that is that does that a lot. And so getting back to the organic disposable plastic bag, they're kind of like doing a false advertisement in one sense. So that should be identified to them. And in some compost and some other municipalities, it doesn't matter where it is, and if it's a political thing that people want to put it in, shame on the politicians for accepting something like that. I hope we never get that low that we have to, in order to be politically correct, that we have to accept something so damaging as those bags. It's always been a problem.
Yeah, and there's no question that all municipal councils feel a lot of pressure between doing what they feel is right and satisfying what their residents want. And sometimes I know you guys had to make very difficult decisions, but I mean, I'm still applauding the people around the table when we made the switch to clear bags from black bags, because there was concern that was going to cause riots in the street. And I think most of the councillors who were around at that time might have got 1 or 2 phone calls. So, the sky really wasn't falling, so.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
CAO, go ahead.
Thanks, Gus and Amy. Just a couple of quick questions, picking your brains for information. So at a recent meeting of the Town of Yarmouth Town Council, there was some discussion around drafting a bylaw that would prohibit the sale of those types of products labeled as compostable, but which are problematic in their facility. Are there other municipalities in Nova Scotia who are looking at doing the same thing?
Interestingly, at the request of the CAO from the town of Yarmouth, I just recently sent an email to my colleagues across the province asking if any of them are trying a similar approach, and we're just waiting to hear back now. That was Monday.
Okay.
Yesterday?
Okay.
Yesterday, just yesterday, so
Yeah.
stay tuned. If we hear anything, we'll certainly report
A
back.
unified approach on that front might be beneficial, kind of like EPR.
Really?
And then the other question I had is around the labeling that Councillor Cushing and Deputy Warden Cunningham alluded to. So in Canada, there are laws around product labeling with respect to nutritional labels or claims being made about certifications. Is it possible that through regional chairs or divert, we can actually go through the labeling regulations maybe to address some of these issues?
Well, the issue is compost certification, because most of these products that claim that they are compostable have been certified by some body or another that under the right conditions, they will break down. The issue is that the right conditions don't exist in municipal compost facilities.
And if I can just add, like this one has a little label that says it's BPI is who's certified it, and it's for collection in municipal programs where approved. So they always have where, if you look at any, like the new products that are out right now, it says acceptable in some municipal facilities. So that's why we try to remind the resident or the business, if they're looking at bringing one of those products in that sounds so wonderful, to make sure they reach out, to make sure, because people, especially businesses, they want to have the products that are compostable or better for the environment, but they're paying more for some products that are just garbage anyway. So we're trying to help that. And they also have the warning on this for plastic too, that it can suffocate you. So it's like the same warnings for plastics. And
At the
it
end of
is
the day, the
plastic.
power's with the consumer, right? If the consumer won't draw the product off the shelf, they'll delist it.
Exactly, and that's what, when a resident comes in, like we had someone that was so irate that he had his cart rejected with these bags in it, and when we explained it to him, we do have paper bags at the office, and we have the large paper bags, so if we give them to go home and open up their other bags to fix the problem, and, he was like, I'm going right there to that Saturday, he said, and like that's the greatest thing, we say, take the bags back and tell them, because we've been telling them for probably 15 years, so, because we've never accepted these bags, they've never been accepted.
Everything? Okay. Ooh. Oh. I never looked down at my thing. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Durkee.
Thank you. Thank you, Gus and Amy. Quick question for you, and I don't know if you can help with this, but we've recently had a lady in Port Maitland who's been collecting the lobster bands on the beach, and she has 4 massive bags with them. Do you get them in the park, and how long does it take for those rubber bands to break down?
I don't know the answer to how long, but I think it would be 3 or 4 human lifespans for sure. And unfortunately, that material is garbage right now. There's no recycling program or anything for them. So anything like that's collected would have to go to landfill.
Okay, that's good to know. I put it out there to Ignite Labs to try and see if they can have somebody that might be able to come up with an alternative, because it is making a mess of our beaches. And if they're not decomposing, then that's not helping. Supposedly they're supposed to rot, but it's not happening, so, no.
No.
Okay, thank you.
There's a couple of questions that I could ask and so on, but I'm not going to go into details or into that request. I know and I respect the town of Yarmouth, the situation that they're under with the amount of plastic that they had been receiving. I know it has dropped down, but it's still got a long ways to go. I don't think a lot of people realize when they take the little tag off a bread bag, and if they accidentally throw that into their organic cart, they don't realize that when it goes through the compost facility, dirt and so on will stick to it, and it becomes like a little, I'll call it like a little rock, and when it goes through the trommel, the dirt doesn't get knocked off, it goes down and it becomes waste as it comes out the trommel. They have a huge stockpile of that kind of product. That's why they want to get rid of the plastic, I believe, out of the system. Of course, the plastic bags that I've seen, and every day they usually take a load of that up to the transfer station to be put onto the waste truck that goes down to Queens, and it is buried, and there's a lot of it. So I understand the town's predicament and so on, so I give them full kudos to start pushing back and so on, to move forward, trying to get our compost into a better situation and a residence. I know Waste Check, you've been out there doing due diligence to the residents and so on that their carts are rejected and so on, and trying to clean up the mess. But the CAO did allude, I think, to one little thing on EPR. And I know it's not on the discussion here today, but just to give my fellow councillors a heads up, can you tell me where EPR is at this time, so they...
No. We presented a draft framework for EPR to the Minister of Environment almost 2 years ago now, I think. The framework, and then they requested an efficiency study, which they've had since, must be 6 or 7 months now, I think.
Yeah.
We gave it to them in the fall, and so we're still waiting on word from the minister. We were at a summit this week, which I know you were in attendance as well, that had representatives from a lot of the big packaging companies and from a lot of the big retail outlets, Sobeys, Loblaws, McDonald's. There were a lot of people in the room, and unanimously everybody there was in support of extended producer responsibility. And there were a lot of staff from Department of Environment in the room, so hopefully they heard that message loud and clear. Industry wants this. Industry's only request is please harmonize with the other programs. Don't come up with some unique set of rules for just Nova Scotia. I mean, 80% of the population of Canada live in provinces that have EPR now. They just want them to be consistent, all the programs. And again, we're paying the fees, we're just not getting any of the money back.
Yeah. Well, I guess I wanted you to allude to CSSA. We did have a meeting with them, a private meeting and so on. And they said if EPR comes when EPR comes in, that there is so much more that can go into the blue bag, as per se right now. They even mentioned chip bags, chocolate bar wrappers, and so on, now that you're putting in your garbage, can all go into the blue bag to be recycled. So EPR would be a good thing for Nova Scotia, but taking an awful long time. But that's off topic, councillors and so on. With no further questions, Gus and Amy, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Why did my computer crash? My computer, she crashed. Right back there. Oh. 5.4, transit, Glenn, is that you?
It's Glenn Bannon, General
Bannon,
Manager.
yes. Yeah, I'm
King's
sorry.
Transit Authority.
I'm trying to get my computer back up, and I have it written here. Yes. Now, do you have a presentation, or? Let me follow it down here. Yeah, 5.4. You're on, sir.
Good morning, Warden, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, Glenn Bannon, I'm General Manager of the King's Transit Authority, and I thank you very much for giving me a bit of your time today to speak to you about something that we're working on at the moment, which is a regional public transportation strategy.
Want to give him a hand? Yeah, Mike will get it for you there, Glenn.
But it's an initiative that I've been working on for some time, and it was approved for implementation, if you will, by our board of directors. Thank you. In September of last year. Okay. So just a little bit of an overview of our service. You may be familiar with it already, but we provide limited public transportation to 3 counties in the Annapolis Valley, Kings, Annapolis, and Digby counties. About 36,000 hours of public transit service annually. That's over about 302 days on average. We carry just under 350,000 passengers, at least those are the figures from fiscal year 2018, 2019. Our numbers are actually better this year, using 13 conventional buses over 6 routes with 13 full-time operators, 11 spares, 2 full-time service technicians, and an office staff of 5. Our system has been around for a while, almost 40 years. And it's evolved over time, but it's kind of time for a little bit of change because we have a few challenges. Right now, the network is illogically truncated at Hants border, and there's a reason for that. West Hants used to be a service partner, and they pulled out a couple of years ago. And so now we go to Hants border, we stop, we turn around, come back. It doesn't really make any sense for us to do so, and I'm going to be changing that. In addition to that, the service ends in Weymouth with no network connectivity at this point in time to destinations beyond that. There are, anecdotally, numerous communities and employers in need of transportation support, but they're not currently served. We have evidence underway of work that's being done in isolation of us in order to address growing needs. And, I see the provincial RFI that went out last year. In addition to that, Wolfville and West Hants are also doing a little bit of work on their own. There has been an expansion of private enterprise or community transit in isolation and without coordination. And the evidence for that is the number of licensed applications that are coming out. There's a desire, at least within our staff and perhaps some of the community transit organizations, for synergies and efficiencies, and there's no clear plan at this point in time to achieve those. There's no coherent regional approach or strategy to address the complex and expanding requirement for public transit in this part of the province. So the planned solution to that is to draft for review a regional public transportation strategy that will support the creation of complete and compact communities through land use strategies, support regional economic development, support a move towards sustainable transportation choices, help mitigate the effects of climate change, and in addition to that, make recommendations for prioritized phased expansion of the service, creation of partnerships, and the integration of existing assets, service governance, because we really don't know what that would look like at this point in time, recommend implementation timelines, and a formula for cost sharing. And there are benefits to a regional approach. First of all, a regional approach would clearly communicate direction and plans for transportation in this part of the province. It would address macro as well as micro issues, reduce conflicts in the competition for resources. At this point in time, I get grants from 3 different levels of government: municipal, provincial, and federal. And when I think about the provincial grants that I apply for every year, I am competing with other transportation agencies here in the Annapolis Valley, or at least in the Annapolis Valley. And in consultation with my partners in the province, I can tell you that they would really rather deal with one entity than a whole bunch of different ones for a variety of different reasons. A regional approach would integrate better with land use planning, I think. It'll promote administrative and operational efficiencies, reduce incremental costs for the partners who participate, align with current and planned resources on the transportation side, improve connection opportunities for ridership, and make the service more robust, durable, and viable going forward. So what's the high-level approach to this? I did forward, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to look through it, a study that is being advanced right now by the Center of Geographic Sciences. I partnered with them starting in September of last year, and the idea there was for us to identify applications for microtransit to serve some transportation needs. Now, I don't know if you know what I mean by microtransit. There really isn't any kind of a set definition. Microtransit could be a rickshaw, it could be a pedicab, it could be a small van, for that matter, servicing a couple of roads where it doesn't make sense to use a large public transit bus. And it could be a fixed route service, doesn't necessarily have to be, and it doesn't necessarily have to run all day either. It could just run during peak periods to get people to work. And really that's what we're trying to do with this particular project, is look at applications for microtransit that could expand the reach of our current service. Those folks who are working on that project at the Center of Geographic Sciences have actually identified 6 areas in the region between West Hants and Yarmouth that they see as having application for microtransit, and we've prioritized 3, and this end of the province is actually one of them, basically from Weymouth down to Yarmouth. And at the moment, what they're doing is, now that they've got those areas identified, they're looking at potentials for routing, and in addition to that, they're developing their set of questions that we would need to gather more information for in terms of a market analysis. We want to form a steering committee to guide the effort and develop a governance structure, and that steering committee would be made up of all potential representatives or partners who are interested in this particular project. We need to conduct engagement and market analysis to refine the needs and build customer profiles, gaining support for a more cooperative and integrated approach. Form a project team, and that would mainly be headed up by myself as the general manager of King's Transit with a number of different partners. Conduct engagement and check-ins to gather needs and guide process, and then finally script for delivery and consideration a regional public transportation strategy. And once that's sort of accepted, approved, however you want to call it, we would follow that on with an implementation plan. And the one thing that I'd like to stress here is whatever we come up with as either a strategy or an implementation plan, it would be phased and prioritized, because recognizing that there may not be a lot of resources for implementation in the short term for a project like this, we would want to make sure that from a funding perspective, we're not it doesn't represent any kind of a shock. We would really like to leverage the spare capacity that's offered by some of the community transit and perhaps rideshare organizations here, so that the capital cost of an implementation plan like this wouldn't be all that onerous. And that's about it for my formal presentation. Really, at the end of the day, I just wanted to introduce the concept as something that we're working on here, and perhaps address any questions that you may have that would have come out of either my presentation or the study material that I forwarded.
Okay. Councillor LeBlanc, go ahead.
Good presentation, Glenn. So you want us to get in, I guess. That's basically the point. You said that it would be up to us to have the route. So we could stay on Route 1 or go inland and get some people. That would take more buses or like the one in Weymouth, I see it going up and down quite a bit when I travel. So that stays on Route 1, does it?
That is correct. It does go into the town of Weymouth, but it does primarily operate on Route 1.
Okay.
Sorry, the town of Digby.
Yeah, so to have a business like this here, how many buses would you need to start?
So in order to do that, we would have to finish our study. Because part of the aim behind identifying these particular microtransit solutions, okay, would also be recommendations for routing, the right sizing of vehicles, and also the right sizing, if you will, the service in terms of the number of buses that would have to operate in order to address the transportation needs.
So we would have to have a survey first before.
That's correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. I don't know why we never had a survey done, but anyway, I've been here for 8 years. I think we've talked about it a couple of times, really. This is something that I've always thought that it would be good to have here. Yeah.
So if I may address your first comment, the main reason behind my presentation today is not sort of to formally ask you to be in on this at all. More than anything else, what I'm looking to do is introduce the idea that it's something that we're working on and hopefully generate a little bit of interest in it. In forming a steering committee, what we would be doing is looking for representation to at least participate in the early stages of the project to see where it is going. And then after that, the towns, municipalities, regions, however you want to term them, it would be their choice as to whether or not they want to participate. And in addition to that, if they do want to participate, at what point in time.
Yeah.
Because I recognize full well that not everyone, not all the different entities have a lot of resources to dedicate to this type of thing at this point in time, and the timing has to be right for all the participants. But the thing that we're trying to achieve more than anything else is the connectivity, because as I said in my opening comments, you know, the system is artificially truncated. A lot of people actually want to go as far as HRM, and that could be part of the strategy too. But in the short term, really what we're just trying to get some momentum around this, generate some interest, and see where we can go at a level and speed that everyone is comfortable with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's interest here.
Okay.
Councillor Durkee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Glenn. Yes, you just mentioned what an issue that we have is that we have young people who don't have vehicles or may not want to have vehicles, and we have tourists coming, and we have shuttle services, but we don't have a bus line to get from here to HRM. So even with King's Transit, do you have to change buses at every connector point to get to the next one? And how come you don't go all the way to HRM?
So at this point in time, we don't have the vehicles, the most appropriate vehicles for us to travel that highway. And I'm talking about the 101 primarily.
Right, okay.
So that is one reason. There could potentially be some concerns with competition with private enterprises like Maritime Bus. In addition to that, we don't really have a landing point at this time either. There are some sensitivities around that in that we couldn't go straight into HRM because we are a public transit service and they have a public transit service, so that could be, you know, construed as competition. In addition to that, as strange as this might sound, they're a union shop, we aren't. And I know that this has been talked about in the past, that on the part of the union in HRM, they wouldn't want to see that interface. For whatever reason, I can't explain it, but it would be something that we'd be looking at progressing, some means of getting to HRM. I don't know if you're aware, but over the last couple of years, we've tried to advance a UPass with Acadia University. And when I first came into this job, seeing that it was unsuccessful in the past, I had asked the question, like, why was this initiative unsuccessful in the past? And one of the things that the students wanted to see was connectivity of the HRM. And in our most recent proposal, which unfortunately was rejected by the student body at Acadia University, I had actually put in the proposal connectivity with HRM, and we were going to use Maritime Bus to achieve that connectivity. I was going to have an agreement with Maritime Bus where they would guarantee a certain number of seats on each one of the buses that left from Wolfville to get to HRM. And in addition to that, they had agreed that they would surge with enough advance notice to get people there. So a similar concept could be employed. There's no doubt about it in my mind.
Right. I mean, we do have an issue. We have no train, we have no bus, we have no air.
Right.
I mean, Yarmouth of all places, we're still isolated.
Right.
And we desperately need some form of transportation, other than a shuttle or driving your own car to get to Halifax. I think it would be something appreciated by a lot of people. I mean, I was a student, and I had many different forms of transportation, and they don't. So it's difficult for parents to have to drive all the way up to Acadia or to Halifax to pick up their kids on a regular basis. So I could see that as a huge addition, and it would be very positive to have something. We don't have maritime bus, right? So we have shuttle, that's it. So it would be
Understood.
nice.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Cunningham.
Right, and you're probably aware that there is an employer in the Montagan area that does run a shuttle for the workforce from Yarmouth, I think, every day. So obviously, there's some level of demand, and given that and what you provided to us today through the report and so forth, I mean, I think it would be a good idea for us to participate, initially, and to see where this may lead, because I think obviously we need to know more as the study progresses, and we need to participate and find out what we might offer for what cost and for what benefit. Yeah. Thank you. Very
Thank
good
you.
presentation.
Okay. Is there any questions? I don't really have a question. I guess it's more of an observation. I do realize that people travel, because I travel quite a little bit. And I like to use my own vehicle. Gives me the independence. I can leave and go when I need to, et cetera. But I do realize there is a lot of people in my same age category that are retired and so on, but their local doctor here will want them to go to Kentville, which is quite a hub in the hospital-wise, and a lot of people go there for their knee replacements, et cetera, and operations of that. And I've talked to a few residents that they drive to Weymouth, get on the bus, and go to Kentville. And then they go back for their checkups and so on, and they do that. And as Councillor Durkee had stated about having to get off one bus, get on another, I believe there's a changeover in Greenwood.
There's, to get to Kentville, you'd have to change first of all in Cornwallis,
Okay.
and then in Greenwood, yes.
Okay. Well, they liked the Greenwood one. They really enjoyed the Greenwood because there was a little bit of a time lapse, and it's at the mall, I believe, is it not? Yes, yeah. And they enjoyed that and so on, but I didn't realize until they told me that that's what they'd done. They have their own car, but they go to Weymouth because they just don't want the drive itself.
Right.
They don't want the drive itself. So if there's one, there's usually two, isn't it? Yeah, two makes four. So there is probably people out there that would use the service, and they found it very cheap. They found it, in that respect, and so on. So it is probably something in the long term. It's just that we've become a population of my car, my way, and I can go when I want and go where I want, and so on in that respect. So I wish you all the best in moving forward, and hopefully someday, maybe Yarmouth County or the municipality of Yarmouth will be like Digby. We'll be able to hook into a system and run with that, and so on, really. On that note, Glenn, again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for your time and attention.
Councillors. Yes. Yeah. Item number 6, business arising from the minutes. Standing item, rural internet update. Was there anything?
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
go
I
ahead.
just want to make the council aware that we are in the final stages of signing the contracts with the internet service providers so that our project, which was awarded in round 1 of the Develop Nova Scotia procurement, can move forward. So any day now.
Okay. Something that was posted last evening by the Chamber of Commerce, and then Councillor Durkee put it out to us again. There is internet discussion on March 26 in Dartmouth, and a couple of the big internet companies are going to be there and having discussion. I don't have it right here before me, but I thought at the time that I know the deputy warden is really heavy on internet, and I was wondering if that was something that, are you around on the March 26th? We have council meeting on the 25th, that evening. This meeting goes from, I think it's 9 o'clock until 3:30, if I remember right, and so on.
Yep, 9 to 3:30 in Dartmouth.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
called Broadband Communities Workshop. Why broadband is a community value, important for its health and prosperity, where technology is going, how this investment is like investments made in municipal infrastructure, what works, what doesn't work, lessons learned, the process and the journey to broadband in your community, and question and answers.
Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
So you said that's the 26th of March? I
Yes.
do believe I could make that date. I'd have to recheck my calendar for sure, but I just hope it doesn't get into how we're going to improve the city's broadband from 4G to 5G.
No, one of the,
That's what, in,
I believe one of the presenters is from, is it from Cumberland County or Pictou?
Pictou County. Yeah,
Pictou
Pictou
County.
County.
yeah, that's something that I certainly would like to go to.
It would be-
What really concerns me about this whole internet thing, and it's the same thing with everything that we seem to be talking about, like the doctor recruitment, which I feel quite bad about a couple things that
Yes.
I had mentioned, but there's always seems to be a download in municipalities, and I'm afraid that we're going to be hearing from different municipalities, and they've taken the bull by the horns, and good for them. Maybe we should have done that, hindsight being 2020, but we were always told that, it's
Yeah.
coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. But I'm not going to belabor this conversation anymore, because
Well, between.
I'll
you and
certainly
the
make
CEO, have a, look, because there's
attempt
a
to make it up
registration,
there,
I don't
that's for
think
sure.
there's a cost to register, other than,
yeah.
travel up, travel back, meals, I think, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. I was gonna look at going, but right now tentatively, I have a meeting in Truro on the 26th, so. 6.2, travel and expense policy T-088-17, and that is from your February 12th Committee of the Whole meeting. I can't remember, there was a couple of questions, I think.
So, Mr. Chairman, what we were discussing was whether or not council was interested in moving to a true per diem framework for expenses, or if they wanted to stay with the cost of expenses with the provision of receipts, but having ceilings on the overall spending. And so what I was asked to do was to craft a framework for you to actually look at. And so in your packages today is suggested language that would replace section 7.2 of your current travel and expense policy. And what that does is bring you to a true per diem framework for staff and council travel expenses. Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
Yeah, no,
Apologize.
it looks good, and I think this will cut down on a lot of work for folks, and the rates seem reasonable. The only question I would have, it all seems good. The incidentals, I'm a little unclear if that's a per diem rate or if there'd be a requirement for receipt there.
So it's a per diem rate, but the policy does provide for situations where a particular item, if it's above the per diem allowance, so for example, if your event is at a hotel and you have breakfast at the hotel and the breakfast is more than $20, bring in the receipt.
And I'll just follow it up, because when you look at the wording, it says, and it's just a wording issue, not a content issue. It says meal allowance will be provided on a, maybe I'm missing something, on a per diem basis. I think it should also say incidental expenses. You should maybe just repeat that language.
Sure, yep.
Will be provided on a per diem basis, and the whole, just to make that clear, because I'm not I'm not certain it's absolutely clear.
For sure.
I understood that was probably what
Yep.
you were.
Clarity is
intending, but-
always good.
Yep. Thank you.
Was there any other, I'm sorry, Councillor Durkee, apologize, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I totally agree. I prefer the per diem route. A couple of things, though, that I noticed. We've specified 1 hour before the recognized time of the start of the workday, travel before 7:30 a.m. Only when the claimant has been traveling for more than an hour. Breakfast, I think that's a little early. I think that's being really specific.
So that's in the existing framework.
Okay. And again, it's a bit specific. And incidentals at the bottom, parking is another incidental that you just might want to highlight as an incidental. And it's not necessarily, like, parking's not necessarily an overnight travel, but,
That's right.
right? So that should be something that we've mentioned, also just overnight travel, but there are, these incidentals happen just on daily travel as well.
Was there anything else? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor LeBlanc, go ahead.
Kind of confused here. You said if you have a breakfast of over 20, save your receipt, but if you're only going to spend $80, why should you want?
So, when a staff person or a counselor is traveling, that person, if breakfast is required, for example, will automatically charge $20 for breakfast. However, if that person is staying in a hotel and you can't get breakfast for $20, let's say it's $25,
Yeah.
we don't want people to incur expenses in the course of carrying out their duties. So we're making an allowance for them to bring in a receipt in order to be fully compensated. So it's no more a maximum daily total, it's a per item total. So if you didn't eat breakfast, you can't claim $20 for breakfast.
No, but you can still spend the $80, can't you?
That's gone. You need to read this.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh, we're not going, okay.
What is the wishes of then of council? You wish to move it forward as the CAO has the change?
It's the wishes
Yeah.
of council, yep.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, it's a good idea because it does strike a balance between, it does strike a balance between the administrative, keeping the administration of the expense low and accurately reflecting the actual expense that people incur. So, I mean, obviously, when you put in an expense, you should have an expense, right? So if you didn't have a breakfast, you don't put in the breakfast. If you were in a place that was, and that doesn't happen very often, but exceptionally expensive, it might go beyond occasionally the per diem. So you would note that. So, but again, I think this is in keeping with other expense policies I've seen provincially. So it very much shadows that sort of best practice. So that's why I think we should move this ahead to regular council for approval. I think that makes sense because it is sort of the way in which business is conducted in most organizations at this point. So seems reasonable to me.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I have one and I'll direct it to the CAO. You have dinner here at $35. A lot of functions and businesses that councillors go away to, usually there's, I won't call it a breakfast, but if it's a 10 o'clock or a 9:30 start meeting and so on, and if you drove up the day of, usually there's, I'll say coffee and the majority of them will have, I'll call it not a buffet breakfast, but croissants, et cetera, which is not always the best breakfast. But if you're staying overnight because it's a 2-day conference, and so dinner was supplied, and lunch was, or breakfast was supplied, so you had lunch at the function, and the evening is on your own. And you go out with 2 or 3 other counselors or business people, and you go to dinner. I can only claim $35.
So if you read the policy, there is an example where if the actual expense is higher than the per diem, as long as you bring in your receipt, you will be compensated for that expense.
Okay, well,
Breakfast was
yeah.
given as an example, but it could be dinner or lunch.
Okay, I was gonna say, because if I can purchase a dinner in the city of Halifax, other than at McDonald's, because going through McDonald's, if I wanted to get a hamburger and french fries, I'm looking at around $14. So I'm trying to think to myself, you know, that if I wanted dinner at a restaurant, I'll say the Keg. Yeah, what would I be, like, yeah, I'd be more than $35. So, okay, as long as the receipt. So I guess where I'm going, or looking at going with this, is we always had to bring in the receipts. I never understood where the issue was. I never minded bringing in receipts. Did I lose some? Oh, yes, I've lost some. I'm not going to deny that. Have I been disappointed? Oh, yes, I've been disappointed. But that's just part of life. I have no issues with per diem and so on. That's the wishes of council. But I always thought, well, bring in your receipts and go forward from there. But so the wishes of council is to move this to the, and it'll come up at this.
Could I have a motion to recommend it to council, please, Mr. Chair?
We can do motions in committee of
A
whole?
motion to recommend.
Oh, okay. I need a motion then. I think that was moved by Councillor Trevor Cunningham. Do we have a seconder?
To recommend to
To
council.
recommend to council? Yes. Seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. Yes. Go ahead.
I don't ever remember doing a motion in the committee of the whole meeting.
Typically, this organization does not do motions in committee of the whole. I don't know why, because it's not that you can't, it's that you can't make council decisions in committee of the whole. You can only recommend to council. Same as the
That's
PAC
right.
makes a motion
Okay.
to recommend to council. Heritage Advisory
Okay.
makes motions to recommend to council.
Okay. So the word recommend has to be in every one of the motions. Okay.
All right, I was
Okay.
just, because this is something new for the
Yes.
first time since
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been sitting behind the table
Yeah.
for 12 years. I'm just,
Yeah. Yeah.
now, shouldn't this be written, since we're talking about a policy, since I'm on the point of order, shouldn't this be in a policy of some sort of council?
What, that you can make motions at committee of the whole? It is. It's allowable under Robert's Rules of Order, and that's where you default in your rules of order.
I just made that point of order, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cunningham, go ahead.
And I know we haven't been adhering to that practice to this point, but I think it is a better practice overall,
Yeah.
because I find it often, it's a little unwieldy when we're trying to come to consensus, and I think the vote is the better way
Yeah.
of moving it forward or not to council, so I'd agree with that. And I'll call for question.
Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. 6.3, filming policy, F-046-20. You have that in your policy, in your package?
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
it's okay? Yep, I'll jump in. So, oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Jump.
So at the request of Committee of the Whole, the policy came back to the staff team working on the project, and we engaged with Film Nova Scotia on the
Yes.
content. We received some excellent feedback from Film Nova Scotia. And if you'll bear with me, I'll give you a summary of what the recommendations were from them. So first and foremost, they recommended a streamlined process and to provide some sort of process mapping. They also made some recommendations with respect to the insurance liability insurance we were asking for. They asked for clarity around the difference between an application which included using municipal property versus an application that did not include using municipal property. There was discussion around intellectual property and the information requests that were being made in the document, as well as post-production material. and legal review of all the documentation. So we got together with, the staff team got together with our legal team, and the document that you see before you is the result of accepting the recommendations of Film Nova Scotia. So we reduced the requirement from liability from 10 to 5 million. We've outlined an approach which is on a private filming location versus a filming location that includes municipal property. When we've made reference to information requests, it's in the form of a request rather than a demand. The same with post-production materials. And we've clarified that just to cover the municipality, we do have the option to put any information that's supplied to us on a project through a legal review.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that Film Nova Scotia has been consulted, and I'd like to make a motion then to recommend to this film policy to council for approval.
Been moved by Councillor Durkee. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. Was there any further discussion on the motion? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded. Motion carried. Thank you. 6.4 Surplus Land Policy S-0818-20. You have that in your package. Any questions or concerns?
So maybe
not,
just for the
yeah.
benefit of
Yeah.
the viewing public, Mr. Chairman, I'll just summarize the changes. So this policy is before you largely for housekeeping. There hasn't been a situation where we've run into a problem, but a couple of housekeeping things just to tidy things up. So in Part 4, we added a second sentence which would allow council to withdraw from an offer if that had to happen. In Part 5, we added some flexibility to allow for situational context, for example, in the marketplace. So when we're trying to determine a value for a piece of land that council has deemed surplus, we want to be able to contextualize it in the marketplace. Part 6 was just for clarification of costs. So for example, if a party's bid was accepted, the deposits are refunded after a period of time to the other bidders. But if that particular bid falls through, when we go to the next bidder, they have to then resubmit their deposits, so we wanted to clarify that. Part 7C is just moving away from necessarily taking the highest bid, stating a minimum offer, but for council to have the flexibility to accept a bid that accomplishes more strategic initiatives that the council is interested in, not just money. And then Part 7G, just again, is just housekeeping that follows along to comply with the other changes we made.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Durkee, you had your mic on?
Sorry. There was one sentence that I found a little bit confusing, and I think for the general public, that in Part 2, deference shall be afforded to desire. Can we just use simpler language? I wasn't really sure of what that meant to start with, so
Yep.
I had to look it up.
Yep. Is it okay if I simplify that in preparation for council, or would you like it to come back to committee of the whole?
No, I'm perfectly fine with having it done for council, so I will make a motion to recommend that the surplus land policy be recommended to council for approval. With the amendment.
It's been moved by Councillor Durkee, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Cunningham, did you have questions, sir? Was there any further discussion on that land sale? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. 6.5 Green Rock Drive, Deputy Warden Cunningham, as discussed at our February 26th meeting. Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As you all know, on February 18th, 2020, we had a Planning Advisory Committee meeting in regards to subdivisions that we moved forward to council for first reading. There is one issue that came up by a number of residents. One particular specific issue came up by a number of residents on the Green Rock Drive, a private road. There was a lot of things thrown around that evening which I did not understand. What I basically brought this forward here to council to do is to get some facts on the situation of that road. Number one, first time I've ever heard in my life that a roadway can have its own separate PID number. That was a first for me. I didn't know that that was possible. And I'd like to know some history on the situation on that road. I did say I'd bring this forward, whether council does or does not proceed in any fashion. I do believe it's a dangerous precedent, but at least to get some facts, because this situation sounds a little bit different compared to other private roads across the municipality, and that includes some of my own. I'm not advocating that we do anything or make a recommendation to council. I just want some facts put forward on the history of that situation, like I'd mentioned. Also, like I'd mentioned, PID numbers, I did not know that that was possible. And possible ways to move forward in regards to the situation that those residents currently need to be in that applies to our current policies and bylaws. I don't want to make anything new and specific. I just want a fact information finding, and I'm not sure if the CAO has already done some of the work, or has he haven't even attempted to do any of the work, or if she's even able to comment on some of the specific questions that I put forward on this. So that's what I'm asking this to be on the committee of the whole agenda for this meeting.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I'm going to ask Liz to fill in gaps, because the Green Rock Drive situation obviously is many years old, and I have been debriefed by the team, but if I leave out a major piece, Liz, feel free to jump in. So Green Rock Drive was part of a subdivision plan that was done and approved correctly. The developer created a PID for the road, and that was done at a time in history when, if subdivision roads were built to a certain standard, they would be taken over by the province, likely as a J-class road, I'm not sure. If they were built to a certain standard, they could be handed over to the province. In that same period of time was when the province put a moratorium on accepting new roads. So the residents were told at the time, because it was the plan, that the road would be turned over to the province, and that never happened. So outside of the subdivision bylaw and the municipal planning strategy framework, this is not a municipal issue. Outside of that, the owner of the road and the developer has since passed away, and the estate is not dealing with the issues, and the road has fallen into significant disrepair. It's my understanding that the residents who live on the road still include individuals who are part of those original purchasers of those properties, who remember those promises that were made that never came to fruition. In terms of how the municipality could help, your local improvement bylaw does not include improvements on private roads, only public roads. So that would require a change in bylaw. This municipal council is very progressive in terms of incentivizing investment in the municipality. And some of your programs are financial programs. And while we have caps on some of the individual programs, we actually don't have an overall cap on how much money the municipality will lend overall to all of its programs. And so if we were going to think about including private roads in the local improvement bylaw, be ready for lots of applications. And so you would want to be thinking about that in terms of your overall finance strategy. There are other options available to the residents on any private road that they would self-govern and they would self-control, and they would be self-investing.
Here. Go ahead, Councilor.
Yes, the private road issues, been out there for a long time, and I brought it to the council table, and memory serves me correctly, we went quite a long way toward developing a policy, and then at the end of the day, through consult with her solicitor and so forth, it ended up being a very, very difficult policy to bring into being. So I'll just remind people of that we have been there before, we have tried, but it is challenging when you get into the weeds, the legalities, and who pays what, and you know, it's very much a problem. So in any event, I think we should continue talking about it and look for some type of solution, but it is not an easy problem to resolve. I live on a private road myself, so you know, I'm familiar with some of the issues, and of course somebody does own the land. There is as the deputy warden said, there are PID numbers, and therefore there is an owner to the property, and that makes it tough to deal with sometimes. So anyway, those are my comments.
Again, Deputy Warden, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I guess my question is through you back to the CAO, and this would be a legal question since there's no solicitor here. I wouldn't expect that you'd be able to answer my question. But since we've finally learned that this road has a PID number, and whatever company that's under, if that company goes bankrupt, what happens to the PID number? Like, there's a whole bunch of questions, Mr. Chair, that seems to be from what a unique situation, and I'm curious.
Yeah, the PID number never goes away off a piece of property.
No, so
Is this
the crux of the
question-
issue here is, so there's a PID number, which means there's a tax implication. Taxes are not being paid. And years ago, we attempted several times to sell it under tax sale. Because of the legal complications around the whole issue, we run into some trouble trying to continue to sell it. So that's the advantage of a private road having a PID number, is you're able to track it, it becomes a legal piece of land in the province. The legislation protects the municipality around collecting taxes and being able to sell it. Some of these older private roads and some of these legacy issues are very murky.
I think you just put more fog in the murkiness in the water, I guess is the best way to describe it.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, through you to the Deputy Warden, that's why in the draft subdivision bylaw that's before council now, and we've done first reading on, we have been so clear on how to deal with the roads in the new subdivisions.
Absolutely, and that was the whole point of doing that subdivision bylaw. But there was this problem that come up during a public meetings that I had no idea. Like I said, first time I learned that we have a roads with PID numbers. I never knew that was possible. You say you learn something new every day. Well, I learned something new that day. It's another situation. I don't know what the solution would be to move forward on it, and I do realize there's many private roads with different situations. There's 3 or 4 in my district that I deal with on a constant daily basis over ownership and who owns culverts and all that other stuff. And Department of Natural Resources, Department of Fisheries, and all that other stuff. There's a lot of nuances and stuff in regards to private roads, but this is just another one. Now what, and if council may or may not do anything with this, I'm not sure. Maybe it'd be advisable to the councillor of that area, have a meeting or try to set up something. Maybe we're gonna have to dust off our policy and bylaw that Councillor Trevor Cunningham had mentioned, that we had trouble in regards, maybe give it another kick. I don't know, but I said I would bring this issue forward, and thank you very much for the clarity, Madam Chair.
Councillor Cushion?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, this is a very difficult situation we're in. I will congratulate our council and our PAC and our, the new regulations under our subdivision bylaws is certainly going to prevent anything like the situation at Green Rock Drive from occurring again. One thing, when we started this back in, I think it was March of 2019, investigating about private roads and whatnot, and then Morris come up with 100+ private roads. And once we started looking at them, there were a number of these so-called private roads were actually extended driveways. And that made me, I was very upset over that, how they all be clumped into one. But then I found out if there's more than 3 residents or more, then it becomes a private road. So, so the private road language is a very loose way to describe a lot of these so-called private roads, or I call them extended driveways. Now, people have also brought to my attention that in the springtime, we have a lot of provincial roads, dirt roads that have become very muddy, impassable, and matter of fact, I used to live on one at one time until it became paved, and I understand that type of problem. However, Green Rock Drive was built to standards, highway standards. It's been a while back now. I drove across the Green Rock Drive, and one of the Yarmouth town fire trucks also drove the 600-meter length. It took 1 minute and 59 seconds to drive that 600 meters, which should have took 59 seconds or less than a minute to get there. Now, it's not that Green Rock Drive in the springtime is muddy, rutty, and whatnot. Green Rock Drive Road is extremely hard. It has a very good foundation. It doesn't get muddy. There's one little place that perhaps at the very end that, and I think that's just a little drainage problem there, but that's not a big thing there. But the road is, the base is actually hard. The only problem with that road is that the lack of maintenance of the big, deep potholes, which makes it very hard to travel over. And again, when I first became councilor, I drove over that, and I told the residents that I'll do what I could to try to help them out. But for the 4 years that I've been here, coming up in October, I haven't really found a solution for them. And I don't know, and perhaps Liz, with her knowledge of being here long, and the warden and the deputy warden, has there ever been an approach taken to gather these residents together and say, here's a possibility. If you organize a, what did the CAO call it, a self-governance, self-control committee or homeowners association or something similar to that. I might not have the right language here, but is there something that, has there ever been anything done like that to inform those residents, this is the only way you're going to get your road done now, is if you, lack of better words, form a homeowners association? So I don't know, has that ever been done before, Liz, in the past?
Not that I can think of.
I don't think as an organized event it has
As an
been.
organized
now,
event.
the various councilors of the area may have verbally passed that along to the
Right.
residents of that
Yeah.
Green Rock Drive.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Liz. That's what I kind of thought. Now, because of our new subdivision bylaws and whatnot, and I'm not saying it's going to work, can we, or how do we, gather those residents together? There's 17 of them there, and 16, and there's a new house just being built in there, right? And get them together and say, here are your options. You know, you form an association, and then you have to pay so much to that, and so on and so on. You just come up with some type of plan for them to improve their roads. They've been promised by a lot of individuals, perhaps, that, yes, we'll do something. My promise to them was, yes, I will look into it and see what I can do. And I've brought this to our attention several times, and I certainly appreciate the work that has been done by council and the PASO and Morris in getting that subdivision bylaws improved and to prevent further complications like this. And again, I will state, and I will argue this very firmly, that all the private roads that are listed are not the same. Green Rock Drive is built to highway standards. That is the big difference.
Okay.
Thank you,
the
Mr.
chair,
Chairman.
yes.
So, Councillor Cushing, I do just want to clarify one point. The actual complication that prevented the province from taking that road was that the last step in that build to
Never done.
provincial standards was never done.
Go ahead.
Yes, I totally understand that.
Okay.
And left them in a problem. So,
If I can just finish,
Yep,
Councillor
okay.
Cushing, yep.
Good.
So, so that's an important thing to remember, okay?
yes.
We don't want to lay any kind of an accountability where it shouldn't be either, right?
That's right.
While Liz indicated that nothing formal had been done, those residents have been made aware of the tools that are available to them. They could have purchased the road at tax sale and owned it themselves.
Well,
They could have done that. They, for the most part, are all aware, through individual conversations, that they could create a homeowners association and they could levy fees on each other and create their own bank account and use the money to fix the road, whether they owned it or not. They are aware of all those things. So, as Councillor Cunningham suggested, this council debated at length a policy framework that could provide for assisting. There were legal complications around the position it would put council in if people didn't pay back their debts to the municipality, and then we had to sell their homes at tax sale because we lent them money to fix a road and they didn't pay us back. So it just gets, the more you try to help, the more complex it gets. And I will restate what I said in the beginning. This is not the municipality's issue.
okay, yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm not arguing that point at all. And I'm glad you brought up the point that although the Green Rock Drive was built to a standard, there was a disagreement between the developer and the TIR for the finished product, and that's how it all started. However, and correct me if I'm wrong again, I believe individual residents have been told what they could do, but have they ever been collectively brought together and say, this is what we can do? No, okay, and that's what I'm getting at. Can we make that arrangement? Doesn't mean that we have to be the bank or anything like this, but this is what can be done if you want to do it. If they don't want to do it, that's up to them. Okay, but I think it's our responsibility because they're taxpayers, and also the garbage truck does go up there. The waste haulers do go up on that road, and but I think if we could come some type of a conclusion to give them folks the opportunity to say, this is what you do. If this is what you can do or possibly do. If they want to do it, great. If they don't want to do it, end of story. They're stuck with it.
Okay. Good point. Councillor Cunningham.
So I would like to add that I live on a private road, and I was, when I first came on, this goes back 10 years, not as long as the Green Rock Drive issue, but it does go back 10 years. So, and I got quite a long way into it. I forced the issue, and we drafted a policy. It was quite lengthy, as I remember it, several pages long.
Yep.
Very detailed, seemed on the face of it to be pretty well reasoned. But at the end of the day, it just became too difficult to do that very thing, to have everybody agree when you have 17 people, or 15 people, or 10 people, as it is on Doctor's Drive and Tranquility Crescent and all that. It doesn't matter where it is. It would be very, very difficult to have the municipality put in a situation where there'd be a potential tax sale, because not everybody may agree. Not all 17 or all 10 or however many may agree. So somebody's going to get into a situation where they're paying for the road improvements at the behest of the majority, or whatever that majority is. It might be a simple majority, it may be 60%, 70%. And so all of these issues we talked about at length. We must have spent 30 hours on the policy, I'm sure, maybe more. And at the end of the day, we ended up, and I'll tell you what we do as a practice on Doctor's Drive. We get together once or twice a year at one of the homes of the residents. Could be my home, could be somebody else that lives on the lane. We've got we do e-transfer or write a check, and we decide what we want to do in terms of grading. And we do also sort of a separate, we do that usually once a year in the spring. Mr. Prime does it. I'll say who does it. It does a good job, brings the fill in, brings a grader over it. It's not overly expensive, it's very reasonable. And our base is not as good as that. Our base is not as good, so that's a little problematic, but we do maintain the road, and it seems to work out reasonably. In fact, I even go and they tease me, I fill potholes myself a little bit, so with the shovel. So, but long story short is, that's the only way forward that we've really been able to come to. Obviously, I'd like something that is a resident on a private road that's more organized, but at the end of the day, it's very tough to bring all residents, no matter where it is, together under a policy. We've tried, and nobody tried any harder than me. I know I talked about it ad nauseum and pushed the other councillors to develop the policy and staff to develop the policy. So at the end of the day, that's really the option, and I'm not so sure how wise it is. If we're not going to have a policy framework to give people advice around, then you're going to put staff in the position of offering advice with no policy framework, and I don't think that's wise either. So I think what I would do is just share with them if somebody asked me what we do. We meet, none of the residents owns the property, and we come up with a dollar figure. We all contribute. Well, it was an equal share, and now we people that live down the lane a little bit pay a little bit more or whatever. But however you arrive at that, by consensus, and it's working reasonably well. And it's not like being on a municipal or provincial road. I'd much rather be in that situation, but we're not. And the road, the cost to bring it to provincial standard would be, for the municipality to take over, would be, in the maybe $500,000 or $750,000. I don't think anybody's got the appetite for that. So that's the intractability of the issue. So my advice would be, and we've talked about this a lot, and I'd love to talk about it more. I just don't know if I could offer a solution to the residents and to me, and all the residents on my private road, I'd be more than willing, and I've tried and tried and tried, but it's not an easy thing to resolve. The best thing to do is, in my mind, and I'm not giving anybody any advice, I'm just saying what we do, is we meet, it's kind of a nice evening, we spend maybe an hour and a half and decide on what it is we're going to do, and essentially it's the same thing we do every year, so it's kind of fallen into a repetitive process, but it does work.
Yeah.
Sorry for being lengthy, but that's the crux of the matter, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Cushion.
Yes, well, Councillor, I can appreciate your efforts over the years in debating the private road issue, and I'm very satisfied, very happy that the people who live on your road are cooperate enough in order to keep that road maintained. And I think the Green Rock Drive people should have the opportunity to do the same thing. As for a public meeting, we can debate that back back and forth. As a cost to fix that road, $500,000 is way off base. It will cost about $100,000 to bring it up to standard, and then they can look after it. But, and again, I'm not saying that the municipality should be involved, but I think we should be able to, personally, I think that give the people of Green Rock Drive the opportunity to, in a collective group, come together, argue, debate, whatever they want to do, but at the end of the day, it'll be their decision what they want to do. If they don't want to organize or help each other out, end of story. So,
Was there any further discussion on that? Because I have a couple of points. Green Rock Drive, yes, the roadway itself is up for tax sale. They, the residents, can put a bid in on that road, and they can own it, and then they can do whatever they wish with it. Where it is up for a tax sale, a person can come in and purchase that road. And my question, and I'm going to direct this to the CAO, if a person, a private individual, purchased that road, does it have to stay as a road?
I'll get back to you.
My point is, if a private individual went and bought that road, they don't want it as a road. They don't allow the homeowners to travel over it any longer. You own the property, you don't want somebody on your property, you put a no trespassing sign. Or he could put, I would think, a toll gate, $2 every time you travel over it. I don't know. Could they do that?
I'm going to have to ask these questions, Mr. Warden.
The other, it's not a question to Councillor Cushion. Councillor Cushion, you have the opportunity, if you wish, to use the facilities here at the municipal office. If you wish to get your residents to come together, or at Pembroke, whatever you wish to do, to sit down, and both myself and the CAO could give you some information on what you could present to them. You know, they could buy it at the tax sale, or they could just start and fix it up, and nobody will ever own the road, and so on. And they can, you know, through the through the improvement.
Homeowners Association. Mr.
Homeowners
Warden.
Association, they could move forward on that. But that's something we should look at here in the very near future. Go ahead, last comment, and we'll
Yep.
move on.
My plan was to, after this meeting here, is to contact the residents and hold a meeting over at our community hall.
There you go.
And give them the information, much information as I can.
Yep. Yeah,
Let them decide what they want to do.
Yeah, it's there, so,
That's,
yeah.
it's there.
Good point.
I told them I'll do what I could, and I've brought the point to, the argument several times to the table, and I know how the rest of the councils feel about it, and I agree that the municipality shouldn't be the bank, as our CAO keeps saying, so.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Okay, item number 7, correspondence.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor LeBlanc, I apologize. Go ahead.
I didn't realize that this was going to go on this late, but I have an appointment and I have to leave at 20 after 1.
Okay. Okay, item number 7, correspondence, 7.1 for action, 7.1.1, the Axe Award. You had that in your package. Their awards is on March 28th, I'll say 6:30, I can't remember the exact time. And they're looking if the municipality wishes to sponsor one of the, God, so many things in my head, one of the awards. And if somebody would like to present that, does the municipality wish to sponsor? I think it was a $100 request. What is the wishes of council? Go ahead, councillor.
I did, Ms. LeBlanc got in touch with me, and I'm going to present one as a councillor on behalf of District 5. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. It's a good event, and recognizes outstanding achievement in the arts area. The Art Act Award certainly is, it's a wonderful evening to go, and certainly I'd be in favor of that.
Okay, so that's, Go ahead, Councillor Cushion.
As with, oh, excuse me. As with Councillor Trevor Cunningham mentioned, that he's sponsored an award, so am I, and I believe it's a worthwhile endeavor that we should support the, what do they call it, the arts, doing plays and stuff. I forget what it's called, but anyway, I think it's a good idea myself.
So is it going to be a recommendation for, go ahead.
If I could just speak to that. If a motion's going to be made to recommend this for approval, I want to remind you that technically this is a grant. We haven't received a grant application, so, you know, absolutely, it's council's prerogative to award this money in this fiscal year for these awards. But it would also be helpful to have council direction on reminding these people that they should be filling out their application in the spring for their annual awards.
So, go ahead, Councillor.
I'll recommend that, even though there wasn't a grant application filled out, since it is a fairly small amount, that I recommend to council that we award the $100 sponsor to the ARC Act Awards, and I'm recommending that for the next council meeting. Thanks.
Been moved by Councillor Councillor Cunningham. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Cushion. Was there any further discussion on it? Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Since this is time sensitive, the ACT Awards, I believe, was the 24th of March?
28.
Oh, the 28th of March, my apologies. Because our next council meeting is not until March the 25th. I just wanted to make sure that it was time sensitive.
Okay.
Question on the motion, Mr. Chair.
Do you have a comment, or go ahead?
Yeah, I do, and again, that's contingent on making them aware that they should next year. And also Councillor Cunningham's, the other Councillor Cunningham's comments, or we should probably make them aware that it's coming, but it's going to be approved sort of close to the date.
Question has been called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. My one comment would be, I am away on the 27th, and then I have to be back in Halifax on Monday, the 30th. So I don't know if I'm going to be coming home. I may take the weekend. So I was going to ask if possibly, well, I know Councillor Cunningham's going to be there, Councillor Cushion's going to be there. Then Councillor's going to... Would you like to make the presentation, or we can ask either Councillor Cunningham or Councillor Cushion on behalf of council?
Yeah, ask them.
Okay. So one of you would be willing to... Yeah, we have to let them know who's going to make the presentation. Okay. And only a 3-minute speech. No speech. No speech. No. Here we- Yeah. 7.2 for information, Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, business plan for 2020, 2021. You had that in your package, whether you liked it or didn't like it, that's the business plan. Any comments or concerns that this council has at this time? Okay, 7.2.2, the Western Counties Regional Library Board formula funding model. You had that in your package. We go from, I can remember the number. What was it? Gee, I apologize. I was going to 79. Is that what we go to for the municipality? It was just under,
From 65 to 79.
yeah, 65 to 79,000. And that, I guess council here over a year ago had argued, I shouldn't say argued, had discussion on the topic.
If I can, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
So
go
just to
ahead.
clarify, so our contribution for this coming fiscal year will remain. This is the calculation that we actually asked for.
Yes.
In our correspondence. This is the calculation to let us know how our contribution will change, given the fact that the province is putting new money into our library system.
Yes.
So we've got what
Yeah.
we've asked for.
Yep. Okay. Item number 8. Oh, oh, I apologize again. No, I apologize, Councillor Durkee. Go ahead.
Seems to be a habit, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just want to say that we just have to recognize that libraries have not had improved funding for many, many years, and they do support all ages in our people in our community, and it's really important for us to support the Western Counties Regional Library Board. They do amazing work, and in order for things to move into 2020, they need to have more money.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item number 8, under new business, grant request from the Yarmouth Hospital Ladies Auxiliary. What's the wishes? Pardon me? That's what I
Yes.
thought. Yes. You're recommending that?
Yes, I'll recommend that we refer that
I
to
know-
our grants committee meeting.
Okay.
Since-
Do we have a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded by Councillor Cushion. Any discussion, question? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. And item number 9, other business is in camera, so we will recess? Motion to go in camera. No, well, okay, motion to go in camera. Moved by Councillor Durkee, seconded by Councillor Cushion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you.